Hey, Kelsey.
Hey, what's up?
Good morning.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I got up at 6:30 because I got my time zones confused.
I'm always up early, no matter what time I'm in.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to get this call going in just a few minutes. So,
Morning, John.
I can already see Julian's on with us. Hey, how's it going, man?
Hey, good. How you doing? Good to see you.
Good to see you again. I met you briefly at Sink Keepers.
Yes, yeah, I remember.
Cool. So we're going to give everybody a minute here to hop on. It's going to take a few minutes, but we'll get the call going here in just a couple minutes.
Cool.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Nice.
Like our guitars there.
Good morning, John.
Good morning.
National Strong. Just here, I'm gonna mute some folks here so we can.
Mute.
Let's see. Mute. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I got a few guitars here. I got a Nashville Strong Fender. Actually, that thing's a pretty guitar, but it sounds good with the high strings. And yeah, this is my. Oh, I'm muted. All right, so let's see who's not muted. Here sounds like somebody's either not here vacuuming or what's going on there. All right, just a minute. We got a ton of people coming in. Welcome everybody. This awesome talk we're going to have with Julian here. We're going to get things kicked off in just a minute. One of the rules here, one of the only rules we have on the call is just make sure that you're muted. And I'm going to go through and do what I can to make sure that everybody's muted. But please, if for whatever reason you start hearing yourself or things like that, please mute yourself. And we will have, hopefully we'll have some time towards the end to answer some questions if you have direct questions for Julian. And yeah, this is going to be an action-packed one, though. I have a feeling. I got a few questions for him, and I'm sure we're all going to have a good time here, learning about everything that he does and how this all factors into what we're doing here with licensing. Let me get you unmuted again here, Julian.
Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us. Sorry it's so early. I hope this was convenient for everybody. I don't know if everyone's on the West Coast or in other time zones, but I appreciate that.
All over the world.
I hope everyone has their coffee and whatnot ready to go, but I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, it's our pleasure. It really is our pleasure. I'm going to go ahead and get things started here then. So for anybody who doesn't know who Julian is, I'm going to go ahead and just read his bio so that y'all can get just a feel for like where he comes from and what he does, what his job is currently. He's the music coordinator at Yay Team, Inc. He's originally from New York City. Julian grew up with two professional string players as parents. Awesome musical family. And has always been surrounded by wonderful music. He began writing pop songs from an early age and majored in musical theater composition at Yale. During a gap year, Julian performed at 250 concerts and toured 30 countries with his a cappella group, the Whiffin' Poofs. Julian has written music and lyrics for 3 original musicals, which have received workshops and productions in New York and LA. Apart from his ongoing songwriting, Julian has enjoyed working in music supervision over the past 2 years. Beginning at Deep Cut Music under music supervisor Maggie Phillips, Julian had the opportunity to work on numerous TV shows and films, including The Handmaid's Tale, Legion, and Isn't It Romantic? Now he's a music coordinator for Amanda Craig Thomas at Yay Team Inc., and he works on all of Ryan Murphy's projects, which include Pose, American Horror Story, 911, as well as several others such as Claws. So awesome! Like for 2 years in, what a resume and what a great experience. I want to ask, like, are you still in an a cappella group?
I wish. No, I'm not actually. I only sing in the shower these days, which is a shame. My roommate though is a songwriter and he's a great singer too. And he and I sing a fair amount here and there, but nothing formal.
If you sing I was singing coffee this morning. It's like you just gotta bring that into wherever you can, sneak it in.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess a couple questions I have. What's your day-to-day job like at Yay Team as music coordinator?
Yeah, so day to day, the cool thing is that every day is so different. That's one thing that keeps this job really interesting is that even though sometimes I'm doing the same thing 2 days in a row. I'm very rarely doing all of the same things 2 days in a row. So a lot of what I do is read scripts. So at Gay Team, because we do so many Ryan Murphy projects, I actually, he's so protective of his scripts that he has them delivered instead of emailing them digitally. So we, Amanda has had all of those scripts sent to me first, which means that I read them first and I break them down, decide which moments to flag for music, especially things that are scripted in directly, like songs that are called out, obviously, and then other smaller moments that might have background music. If something's in a car or a nightclub, there usually will be some kind of background source. And then, yeah, I break that down in an email. I'll put it in our Excel breakdown, which is kind of our Bible for every show. And then, so reading scripts and breaking them down usually happens at least once a day with how many projects we have going on. And then certainly doing a lot of the clearances. That's a big part of my job, is when it's time to clear the songs in an upcoming episode. That can often mean like right before the episode is being finalized. Sometimes it's, a new song crops up 2 days before the mix, which is the final deadline, and then we have to clear it urgently, and that usually happens. Like sometimes I don't know how it's going to happen when we have 10 songs that we do need to clear in 24 hours, but there's always this like faith that you have to have going into it, that like the ones that you really need will go through, and then if not, you'll have backups prepared. And yeah, so that's a huge part of my job. It's very time consuming and very involved, and it's something I didn't even do on my last job with Maggie. So I've definitely gotten the boot camp with Amanda. She was pregnant for the first part of my job with her, and she was kind of, although she's such a hardworking person, she didn't take, barely took any time really off. But there was a period of time where I was really like kind of put in the driver's seat in a way that was huge for me. I learned a lot just through trial and error. And so that was with the clearances, but also creatively, like I took over a lot of those responsibilities. And that's something, creative stuff with Amanda, she's very not protective of it. Like we do collaborate on pretty much everything that we both have time to collaborate on. So yeah, day to day, I'm usually finding music for at least one spot. If it's a small spot, like one of the ones that I mentioned in like a background scene, that might be one thing, or it could be a big montage song. If they didn't script it in, it could be a, end credits song, something like that.
Oh, well, that's a fascinating. I had no idea that it literally started that early on in the process, where you're literally reading like a paper copy of a script. How cool is
I know. It's so old school. I'll show you. I have American Horror Story season 9 right here. Yeah.
Amazing. And what an opportunity. It sounds like you really got a great opportunity, especially like with her being pregnant, to be able to like really just kind of be in the driver's seat and take on all this responsibility. And then to hear about like how you have to have backups to the backups with some of this stuff. There's got to be a lot of work that goes into getting all the backups cleared as well, kind of pre-cleared ahead of time.
Yes, that we do have to do that sometimes. Like we're on the mix stage. Ryan Murphy's TV projects tend to book a few extra days on the mix stage, which I appreciate, but it does mean that they have more time to change their minds, which does happen too. So we end up having to clear backups for the backups a lot.
And there's when you're talking about different windows that happen, so different productions have different windows that you typically have to play with. What kind of window do you typically have turnaround wise from like when you actually read the script to when it's actually, I mean, it might be months, right? Or
yeah, totally. It's so interesting. Totally, yeah. It does depend. Sometimes it's way too fast. Sometimes it's like we get the script, say we get the script on a Monday, they might start shooting later that week. So we definitely, you have to read the script as soon as you get it. If there's like a choir scripted into the episode, you have to make sure we have time to hire everybody and clear whatever song is being scripted in there. So yeah, it's a very urgent thing to read the script, and usually it's a relief that there's nothing quite like that. But then, yeah, it could be shooting later that week or 2 weeks later, and then it'll start post-production immediately after that, and usually it'll be like mixing 2 weeks later than that. So I'd say the whole beginning to end process in the fastest version would be about a month, which is still not very much time considering how much might have to go into the episode. Some shows are just on a different timeline though and can be stretched out. So like there's a show that I started working on when I first began with Amanda in February that still is not finished yet. So it's just, it's kind of a mixed bag.
I imagine that's just the way it's got to be when you're part of like an overall production team, and there's going to be people that hand stuff off to you. There's going to be people that you hand stuff off to, and that totally makes sense. How many shows do you think you're placing music for at Yay Team every year, would you guesstimate?
Every year? Yeah, that's a good question. I have
there in February, but like with this company, like how many shows do they place music for?
Yeah, I'd say it's about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'd say it's probably about 15 to 20 a year. That includes movies as well.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool. Now, how does Yay Team receive the music for the projects it uses?
Yeah, I'd say it's like kind of we run the gamut. So a lot of open listening, a lot of just us trying to find the best music out there for whatever we need, which often is going to be popular music, things that are well established, because Ryan Murphy is our main employer, and he kind of he puts a premium on recognizable songs, and I think that's like a big part of his brand. So we definitely have to feed into that. But there are of course moments that we aren't going to either spend the money for a big song, or it really doesn't require it if it's like a background spot. So we do end up sending searches to a lot of the music community out here, and that might just be at the beginning of the season. So at the beginning of the season, we might have like an email search sent to, it could be anywhere from like 5 to 10 to 50 different companies that we think might have the kind of music that we need for this show. And we usually break it down in various categories for what the show might need, because it's never just one type of music. And then they'll send it back. We won't even listen to it right away. Like it's just kind of sitting there until there's a spot that we kind of have to go digging for it. And we like having the leisure to go digging through it. Sometimes we don't have that leisure, and sometimes we have to send a follow-up search just to a few people saying like, hey, we need this right away. Can you send this, this, and this? And hopefully we get something back from those people. But yeah, so it's a combination of searches to a wide community at the beginning of the season to more specific honed in searches. And then of course, production music plays a pretty big role, like library music. There's a fair amount of that in all of these shows, because sometimes these are just wall-to-wall episodes and we need to fill it.
Music libraries that you tend to work with and just kind of have, like, in case you need a cue of this length or that length.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's interesting to think about like the process as a whole. and the different places that you could music, and also the various stages of urgency with which you need to like have ready. Sometimes you have the leisure of being able to just kind of sift through things, and then other times it's just like urgent, because I see it all the time with like the briefs that come in for Catch the Moon. It's like we need this in like an hour. Like it happens actually quite a bit, because maybe it could even be a thing where you've been sifting it, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe you've been sifting through a bunch of stuff and you're realizing that nothing quite hits it on the head, and then that's where kind of the urgent thing comes in, where like we really need this.
Totally. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, sometimes we've sifted through, like by mid-season, we might have sifted through those bins enough to know kind of what's in there and kind of what's missing. So that might be the case. With libraries, yeah, there's so many good libraries out there, and we have contacts at all of them, and like sometimes we'll look through those ourselves, or we'll hit up our contacts and say, hey, can you send this or that? So it is a mix, and it's really cool. The pace of it is something that I've gotten more and more used to as time has gone on. It's not something I think like everyone would be able to handle, and that includes me sometimes. Like I get very overwhelmed by it. There are times when it's just too busy, because if you're working for a successful supervisor, it means you're working on so many projects simultaneously, and you have to be used to multitasking, and that's just like, it's something that I luckily was eased into with my first job. I started as an intern, and I kind of like saw how everything was working without having as much responsibility. But like once you kind of are responsible to take care of all of these different shows and what they need, that can be a pretty overwhelming and stressful process.
But I'm sure you get a lot faster at it, right?
Yes, yeah, you definitely do. I mean, yeah.
That's cool. How often do you guys use songs with, I know you were talking about like mostly like you use a lot of instrumentals for like, if there's like background stuff over behind dialogue, but how often do you say you would use songs with like vocals versus just instrumental stuff?
Yeah, I'd say like it's probably 75, 25, 75 vocal. Like featured stuff would certainly be mostly vocal. Background stuff would be, sometimes it's a mix, like sometimes we provide both a vocal and instrumental, and editors will make some kind of hybrid because they need to dip the song down during dialogue. But sometimes it's purely instrumental. That might be because the piece itself is instrumental, and it might just be because the vocals would be distracting, and the beat works well for whatever we need.
I've heard that about like having different mixes for different types of situations, including stuff like just taking the tops off of things, like like hi-hats, snares, like sizzly kind of stuff. Is that something that you will tend to ask for? Like if you're just like, we don't want drums on this, we want, are these things that specifically come in, and then the people that you ask, obviously you probably have like a relationship with them where they can kind of turn it around pretty quickly?
Yeah, I'd say like we don't get super granular like that too often. I mean, it'll happen when someone tells us, oh, this is a cool track, but it's distracting, like one of the editors, for instance. That's not a decision that we're going to make on our own usually, just because I think we're just moving too fast, and those are the kind of details that do get swept under. Like there will be times where I'm searching through a library for a spot, and I'm like, oh, it's a shame that this song has this one element, otherwise I would pitch it. And then I like do look for the versions list to see if there's a better option.
Sorry, Julian. I'm trying to. I'm just going to go ahead and mute everybody one more time here. I think I hear something going on here, and then Julian, I'll make sure you can unmute yourself, or I'll unmute you here in a sec when I find you. Or you can unmute yourself, because I'm having a hard time seeing you in here, if you don't mind.
I got it.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks. part of the challenges of we got like 88 people on the call.
Oh my God, I didn't realize I can only see the first 5 names. Oh my God.
You're super popular, man. Everybody's looking forward to this.
That's
So
awesome.
I guess the next thing I wanted to ask, so we got a bunch of students here at Catch the Moon. They're all eager to make music that companies like yours can use. What are some of the things that grab your attention about a song when you hear it and you feel like it might be great for licensing on a show that you're working on?
Yeah. I mean, depending on the style, but often whatever it is, if it starts right away, basically, I'm sure you've heard that before, but an intro, I think aesthetically is often important for a song, and it might work for licensing, but it might not grab the person's attention right away. So I do try to skip beyond whatever the intro is if I'm listening, but then I end up, maybe in the middle of the song and then I lost something earlier, and I don't often have time to really like go back and make sure. So it is about kind of just hitting us right away with a good beat, a good catchy melody, whatever, a guitar riff or a bass line that's really grabs you. I mean, whatever the case may be, that's kind of the through line, is that you want it to grab our attention right away. And like, it shouldn't be cheesy, and I think that is a roadblock that a lot of people have as songwriters, is that they're like, lyrics especially can be cheesy and not, because they think that that's what quote unquote sync music is all about, is like big advertisement placements. But for me, I'm working on TV shows, and I think that like that's a pretty transparent sound and a pretty transparent lyric quality. So I definitely try not to place anything that I don't actually like on some level, which is important. So basically, it shouldn't feel too manufactured and too designed for what it's going to turn into, which is hopefully a placement. But I think it has to have some kind of merit as a song separate from that.
Yeah, so it's got to have some soul. It's got to be authentic, not cheesy. Like, you're talking about lyrics, you're talking about like cliches, things like
Yeah.
kind of like draw a big like target that says this is kind of like it's sort of like what separates like the amateur stuff from like the stuff that's like professional grade, would you say?
Yeah, totally.
If it doesn't grab your attention right away, and then probably like the audio fidelity like of the production itself, you can probably hear like right away.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely, and there is so much great music out there, and professionally created music out there, that when something is not recorded in the best, most professional manner, it's really apparent. So that is a good point. Yeah, I think like the cliches, that is a hard thing to avoid, and maybe it isn't something to avoid. Like I talked to my roommate, who I mentioned is a songwriter, and he writes really great songs like every day. He does a session every day pretty much, and he has a hard time getting them synced, or not that he's actively pushing them himself, but like they're not necessarily getting synced all the time. But one song that he has that has gotten synced various times is called Everybody Yeah, and it's like, he thinks it's like he wrote it at a sync camp, and it's like not something he's proud of at all, but it is the one that's made him the most money on sync. And it's just kind of a ironic thing that like there is room for that kind of thing, and that's, from my personal perspective, not something that I'm looking for. But
yeah, well, there may be some things like he's put in like the 10,000 hours on like other types of music. So when he approaches something like that, he might have like a different perspective on like, just how to go about writing a song like that. So
totally.
Maybe it's like the lens through which he writes a song like that is different, because he usually doesn't write that kind of music.
Yeah, totally. And I'm sure it's like,
Maybe.
I think you're right. And yeah, who knows? But it does take so much skill as a songwriter to write even a very basic, accessible song. That's not as easy as it sounds. So, I mean,
I think that's what I was trying to get at, that maybe there's like a not as is it soundsness to some of the stuff that's like hand clappy?
Yeah.
I personally love writing that kind of stuff. I love writing like hooky, like a hand clappy kind of stuff. And I can speak from my experiences with it that it's a little trickier sometimes than it seems to write that stuff in a good way that but then sometimes you have the cliches and it's like that's because they're looking for a specific lyric for like an ad or something like that. Totally.
Yeah.
Got another question for you, Julian. What are some of the current trends in terms of the types of music that are hot for show placement right now?
Oh, I mean, I think there's so many indie singer-songwriters that are pretty hot right now, especially female vocalists. I mean, thinking of like Phoebe Bridgers and people like that, I think that a lot of people are imitating her, and that's definitely a sound that keeps coming up. Although it just depends on the shows you're working on because there are so many different kinds of shows being made that necessitate different kinds of music, and I don't think it's easy to just say one sound is going to be the one that pervades them, but there definitely are a lot of people who are making all kinds of shows that like that indie singer-songwriter style, and they want to somehow fit it in. So I would say that's my answer for that.
No, it's just interesting because that's obviously always going to change. The target is always going to change, and then what's hot is always going to change. There used to be a time where it's like obviously like not quite the hot thing anymore, but the Black Keys kind of sound or whatever. There's going to be phases with all of this, and we all kind of have to. If we're making music and trying to target what's happening like right now, we got to kind of be on top of that. And getting information from people like you is exactly like what's going to help us all do that. So thanks for
totally, of course.
And then the other final question I had for you: any tips you'd give artists and producers on making songs easier to use on TV shows, or is there anything you'd say makes it really difficult to use a song you'd otherwise want to use?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think long instrumental breaks for a song, or just like, irregular structure might make it tough sometimes. Like if you have long breaks between a verse and a chorus or something weird like that, even if it's a good song and you like all of the individual sections, it's sometimes difficult to propose using something that is so hard to follow structurally. That's one thing. I mean, as far as like the assets that you provide for a song, it's important to have instrumentals available and potentially stems available. Like, I don't think it really will ever prevent us from using something when there when there aren't those assets available, but I think that it'll probably make us gravitate toward them a little bit more when we know we can provide that. Yeah.
When you're saying longer instrumental breaks, are you talking kind of in like in almost a way in like the momentum that gets built, and then like having the picture be able to kind of follow that momentum? Maybe if there's like a longer break, it doesn't quite emotionally kind of gather steam the way that it needs to in order for it to lock the picture.
Totally. Yeah. Basically, like if it needs to be edited by like if the editor needs to chop the song up, that's probably not going to be a good thing, because I mean, even though the editors do that anyway, it'll be in more minor ways sometimes, or a lot of the time, and it'll be meshing the instrumental and the vocal versions for a way that works for the dialogue that's happening right there. But if they have to like go through the song and chop it up and rearrange it, it's probably not going to be a good sign for it staying.
Totally makes sense. That's really helpful. I definitely want to make sure we have enough time to go through and answer some questions we have on the call, if you don't mind.
Not at all, yeah.
Sure, we got a ton of questions here. So go ahead. If anybody has a question, just go ahead and start posting them in the chat, and we'll just start grabbing them here. Let's see. Do you look for Christmas music?
Sometimes. I mean, I guess it's coming to the point where the Christmas episodes of our shows are likely coming up. So Yeah, I think like those are going to be a lot of famous Christmas songs, and sometimes we'll need covers that will go non-MFN with the big publishers there. But yeah, it probably is going to come up soon.
Cool.
Yeah.
Certain months where pilot season is coming in and there's like more activity in terms of like finding music. Do you know kind of like what pockets of the year that those might be?
I've totally lost track of that actually, because the streaming services have taken over. A lot of the shows I've worked on have been on streaming platforms, and I'd say like the one thing is fall TV schedule that I am very much feeling is about to start. So because a few of our shows are airing on networks all at the same time, so right now feels like a bit busier.
So there's kind of like right now might be kind of the crunch to find the music for these shows that are about to launch. Basically.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I guess. Another question, and this is one that a bunch of people I know would want to know the answer to is just covers. Like, how do these factor? And we definitely talked about this at Sync Keepers. Like, just kind of like the various like complications around clearing stuff sometimes. How often do you use like versus like if they want like this song and for whatever reason they can't get the original or they just don't want to use the original, they want like a creative version of it. Like what goes into like making the decision to use a cover? How frequently do you use covers?
Yeah, I'd say it might happen if the original master denies. So if we try to clear the original version and the master denies, but we have publishing approval, we might then say, okay, well, this song works really well here and we don't want to lose it, so let's look for a cover. And that'll like usually start with like, if that's the route that leads us to a cover, we'll probably try to find another famous artist who's recorded it, but sometimes we might not find that, so we have to look to see kind of who's covered this song. Like, is it already out there? Very rarely are we designing our own cover for a moment, like only I guess if that happens and we can't find anything that works, we're gonna then say, okay, we need our own version of this. Or if it's like already scripted in for an on-camera use and when we know that our actor is going to cover the song, then we might get a band to accompany them for, as needed. It just depends on the situation. But yeah, there's one experience I had where we did kind of design our own cover in a way that was really exciting for me. It did start with the denial from the original master, which was Stevie Wonder. He's like a notorious, he's difficult to get approval from. I love him so much. And he has such a strong sense of his own brand and legacy. So he doesn't approve anything that involves drugs or violence or sex, I don't think. So it's difficult to use Stevie Wonder songs. And there was this one Christmas episode, speaking of Christmas music, this show Snowfall, where we ended up recording a cover of his song Someday at Christmas, which he actually was covering. There's a few other versions of it, but we found, if you know who the old soul singer Solomon Burke is, we found his son, Solomon Burke Jr., to do a cover of it, and that was pretty cool.
That's so cool. It sounds like from what you're saying, for the most part, the use of covers is usually because it's like that instant recognition and in a way, and then maybe there's something with the original master where they're just kind of hearing it to the picture. They're just like, oh, that would be the perfect song for this, but then they can't get it. So they like, it's just kind of very rare for you to say, we're just looking for a cover of something. Let's see if we can find something that's like a Stevie Wonder cover just in general. It's usually like a very specific song, would you say? Yeah,
I'd say it starts with a specific song and then definitely like a bit of a hunt for who's already covered the song. Because if there is a great cover already out there, like we will pitch that. That's kind of that's a reason to put out covers. As a songwriter, I think, or as a performer, that's a good reason to do it, because sometimes it'll be easier to just license that, or it'll cost less money than creating something. And then if not, we will create it ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, with such a wealth of different songwriters and production houses and things like that, it's a thing where if you want like a specific version of a cover created, it probably wouldn't be that difficult to kind of order it up.
Oh my gosh, not at all. Yeah.
If that's the case, people are eager. They're definitely hungry to do this kind of stuff. I know. I'm alone. It's just like, yeah, it's the case for me too. So in terms of like just the stuff that I'm turning around for different projects, and so in terms of like the covers that get used, it sounds like it might behoove somebody to release the cover and if you're an artist, to get some type of recognition for the cover, if you can, like make a really cool version of it, get it out there. So then if you so happen to be looking for this cover, you're going to see on Spotify when you type it up, or maybe like you'll just be scanning through a few versions of the song and you're like, oh, that's a really cool artist version of the song. Do you think that that's something that happens sometimes?
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. It happens that way a lot, where it will be hard to clear the original, and we'll look to see what's already out there. And I would say, like, maybe if you're trying to make covers, piece of advice would be to like not necessarily cover the most famous songs, but like, songs that are maybe a tier or two below that, because it'll just be hard to stand out among thousands or millions of covers of Let It Be or whatever it is. So yeah, I would say that's an important thing to keep in mind. Like, and it's probably really fun to just go and make covers and put them out there. Like, but if you're a songwriter, you also want to flex your creative muscle and write the songs that you want to write. But covers are a great thing to have available.
That's all really helpful. Let's see. Do we have to get clearances for covers, or do you? I mean, that's basically done through the publisher. Like you clear the song, the publisher. Every song has a publisher, or sometimes multiple publishers, and you have to clear it through the publishers. Correct?
Yes. So we would have to clear the composition separately, and then we would clear the cover, the recording, from whoever made it, from the label or from the person individually.
Let's see. Just scanning through. How many licensing agencies in general are there? I'm not sure that's a question that you would know the answer to, but I mean, venture to say there's like hundreds, literally.
Definitely hundreds. Yeah.
How do you decide? Oh, here's a good one. How do you decide which agencies to reach out to in order to find what you need? Are some of these like relationships that you've already built and you kind of have the trust there, or is it something where, it's like how did you and your company build these relationships with these agencies, and how did you decide to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of that does predate me, because my bosses have been doing this for longer than I have, and they have met many people. My current boss, Amanda, is very well connected. She does take a lot of meetings and go, and especially in her earlier days before she just had a family, she's been working at various different places and really putting herself out there. So I think, like, I'm lucky to inherit some of those relationships. But I'm also, meeting people here and there and going out to events and meeting new people and seeing people that I've already connected with at licensing agencies, and developed an idea in my head of what they're good at and what they're not, and try to select moments where I would reach out to some of them. And that is a deliberate thing. Like, whenever we send a search, we have to think carefully, like, who has the best stuff like this. But over time, you kind of do develop a sense of that.
Awesome. That's very helpful to hear your perspective on that. The next question that we had was, let's see, where was it? apologize. That do you search? I did have it in shoot. Do you? Okay, we got the clearance question is answered. Is there some general database that licensing agencies can go to help fill needs, or does always the music supervisors reaching directly out to agencies?
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
That's interesting. I don't know specifically of any database, but I think it's possible there's something out there that like at least allows sync agencies to kind of organize their portfolios in a helpful way. But usually it's the music supervisors they're the ones who know what they need, and they're not filing their needs into a database. So it is kind of just a matter of like knowing music supervisors and having the ability to connect with them, and being really careful about how you connect with them and how often you hit them up and all of that. There's a lot of thought that goes into that. But yeah.
And I imagine you build up your own database too that you're constantly searching. Do you use like Disco, or do you have some other platform you use in order to organize the libraries that you have internally?
Yeah, we use Disco and Dropbox, and I think both are useful in different ways. So yeah, at this point it is, sometimes we do have like a need that will come up and I'm like, oh, I feel like I gathered music for this exact thing like 6 months ago. So I'll look through it and I'm like, oh yeah, there was a similar search. So I will pull options that did not get used the last time and find a few new ones. And yeah, that's kind of my process.
And you'll kind of tag stuff through Disco, or what are the pros and cons in your experience with working with like Dropbox versus working with Disco? I'm curious, like what you do with those two, are they just like we have a bunch of stuff that's in Dropbox and we know it's there, and we have a bunch of stuff that's in Disco and we know it's there?
No, it's actually like using them for different functions. I'd say Dropbox is really internal. Like we barely ever send links to Dropbox folders. And on Dropbox, we'll like include the fees things were pitched at, and that's a huge thing to keep track of on our end. Is like, oh, we have a sense of this song, how much it would cost because it was pitched at this fee. But we wouldn't put that into Disco because we end up sending we send music to editors through Disco. We send music to, whomever. That is our external file sharing service. So we end up using that because it has so many good features. I'm sure everyone who uses Disco knows about them, but metadata is really well organized within Disco, and it just is a bit prettier, I think. Like you can just kind of make it look neater, and there's just a number of good functions that will make it quicker. So we do end up transferring things from Dropbox to Disco quite a lot.
Cool. Got another one here. We got another question. Sorry, we got a lot of questions, which is great. How long do you hold on to submissions? Do they ever become stale and you move on to more current submissions? I think they're talking about like, if there's songs that were submitted for various things, or they things where you just like file those away. I think you kind of talked to that a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, we definitely we don't throw anything away, but and like I said, like if a certain search comes up twice, once was a long time ago, I still would look through what those were. It depends on the show. If it's a show where we're using only contemporary music, then it probably won't work. But if it's a library search, then like I would double check to make sure that those tracks are still available in the library, but I wouldn't discount them because that library pull was a few years ago.
Here's a question from Lance. I came late to the party. Sorry if this is a repeat question. For an indie artist, would it be better to approach to develop relationships with music supervisors or sync agencies or music or production libraries? It's actually sound like three different places you could potentially go.
Yeah. I would say all of the above, Lance. I think like those are really all important assets for a songwriter and or for an artist. If you want to make, I think people have varying success with production libraries, writing for those production libraries, but some people do very well with that, and it's not like it increases your brand as an artist at all, but it does allow you to make small amounts of money repeatedly, which I think is important. Sync agencies, I think, is very, very important because they are probably the most important of this trio, because if you get signed to a good sync agency, then they'll be pitching your music all the time, and that's the most valuable way for music supervisors to receive music. And then developing relationships with music supervisors directly could work. I mean, if you become like really friends with someone, they might throw you a bone and consider your music whenever they have the opportunity to. But pitching your own music directly to a music supervisor might not be as effective as a sync agency pitching it on your behalf, because if we don't know you, then we're likely to ignore it. And if we don't, if we do know you, though, I see that you say develop relationships with, and yeah, it could be valuable.
Yeah, it's like your foot in the door there.
Definitely.
Hang on a second. Everybody again. I think there's somebody who's got their speaker on, and I apologize, Julian, if you don't mind unmuting yourself one more time.
Not at all. I got it.
Thanks. So we got next question. Mike asks, how do you feel about artists, songwriters that create different styles, an EP of pop, an EP of EDM? I think this like kind of speaks to the whole thing that we wonder sometimes, is it better to present a package of things that has like a specific sound, or to send a playlist with like 6 or 7 different styles of music? What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I would venture to say it's really important as an artist to be able to have that versatility, just like for your own personal growth. But I think that you should separate it when you're pitching it generally. Like, it might just be confusing to people listening one track after another, like, oh, wait, is this the same person? Whereas like, if you send the rock stuff one month and then the next month you'll send some of the hip hop or whatever it is you're doing, like maybe put it under a different name. Like, that isn't the worst idea, because you could have various artist projects running simultaneously, and one of them might take off and the others don't, and then that's the one that you should follow, probably. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I got another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Hear a song do you like? Do you make an offer to the artist to put the song on hold, or does the offer only come once you're ready to clear the song? I think they're saying like, do you? Not sure what exactly the question is there.
Yeah.
How long would a song stay on hold? So maybe it's when do you know like for sure you want to use the song? And how is the communication? What's the communication like that goes on during that process?
I guess it would be like, hey, we like this song. Can you please tell us how the publishing and the master rights break down, so that once we are ready to clear it, we're prepared? And it's not usually going to be like on hold. There's no on hold, because we have such a tight turnaround. So like, if you don't hear from us within a few weeks, it probably means it's not happening for that spot. But like, if we do like the song, I'm sure we'd consider it again.
Sure. And I've even had things personally that have landed where there was no communication at all too. So sometimes you don't get communication, but it still gets used and you end up finding out about it. So it runs the gamut. What are the hot genres right now, top 5, in terms of like stuff that you would say is asked for the most frequently?
Definitely. Well, with what I'm working on, I'd say hip hop, R&B, anthemic rock or pop, like, I don't know, not hard rock, but like grittier grunge rock for dive bars and stuff like that. And um, what's the last one? Yeah, maybe just like straight ahead pop is used quite a lot.
Well, I mean, that's really helpful because it's so important to set your sights, what you're trying to like, what bucket are you trying to get your music into? What you know, it's part of the language of all this is making sure that your stuff kind of fits into a genre that's identifiable. And you know, as like cold and calculated as that sounds from like a creative perspective, it's
No, if you're able to do it all, yeah, you do want to target what will be successful.
yeah. Let's see. Do you think those genres are across the board, or is it different with different shows?
That's the thing. It's different with different shows. So it's a bit hard for me to be totally objective about that because I'm working on a lot of shows that are period specific even. So like nothing contemporary would work at all. But I was trying to think of the shows that are contemporary. So for those that I'm working on, that's kind of what's most in demand.
Cool. Might as well just ask the question because it seems like it's getting asked a lot. I know they answered a lot of the time with this, but I'll let you obviously answer because it's you. If people wanted to submit music to your company, do you take direct submissions? Like how does that whole process work for your company? And
Totally. We don't take anonymous direct submissions. So like, and there's no website where there's like a submission option or anything quite like that. It's just me and Amanda, and there's someone else coming on soon. But basically, it would be extremely overwhelming if I gave my email out and had hundreds of submissions going. So I try to avoid that. But like if I meet someone in person and I'm connecting with them, like that might be the way that I end up getting sent a submission. And now there are people who know my email certainly and like will hit me up and like I'm people that I like and I'm down for that. That's something I'm totally used to and is part of the job certainly. But like we usually try to solicit submissions when we need them. Yeah.
awesome. That's I'm not sure who's
That's mine. That's mine. I'm sorry. Let me turn that off. I don't know. I've never.
I just want to say thank you so much, everybody, for being so polite and being like so good about keeping your microphones muted. Sometimes it can get a little chaotic with that, and I want to just sincerely thank everybody. It's been really good. Yeah, that's why I thought maybe somebody jumped on the call and they haven't gotten muted yet or something like that. Let's see. There was another question here. Acknowledging that most usable songs are upbeat. Do you use tracks with a lower BPM?
Definitely. Yeah. So that's definitely, there's plenty of room for that. Like a lot of, when I was describing R&B just now, I think a lot of that tends to be slower, moodier, vibey kind of stuff. Trap seems to be a big one too, which I forgot to mention, but that kind of plays into hip hop and R&B too. It's mostly the drums that you hear that are characteristic of that, and then the vocals too. But yeah, it's a really, that's kind of a big sound these days that a lot of people are trying to participate in.
Yeah. Here's another good question. Does it help you to be like a cool artist, like somebody with a following? Does that
100%.
placements?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you have some momentum behind you, that's like where we might have heard of you just from our own music listening. Like that's big because we like to feel like we're, sometimes unburying treasure. That's like a big source of satisfaction for us is like finding things on our own. And if there's momentum behind you as an artist, that's definitely helpful. And it'll mean that like more, it'll feel more authentic, I think, um, when we use people who are kind of emerging versus people that are just writing production music, because I think it's like there is a difference there, and someone is putting their life's work into building a brand, and we want to support that. And like, we will need production music always, so that's always helpful, and we appreciate people who are making that music too, but it's not going to be the same level of priority that we're going to put into kind of mining through what's out there.
So you love supporting artists that are touring around and releasing albums and doing all that stuff, making cool music. And
yeah, definitely.
Hard to get a following and all that stuff. It's appreciated and sought out.
Yeah, certainly. And it's a cool way to, like, for music supervisors to be a little like A&R people too, because you could look at how the artist's numbers look before the episode that they're in airs, and then afterwards see like the spike in engagement, and that's a very cool feeling. Yeah.
There was another great question here. Sorry, do you have time to answer a couple more?
Yeah, a couple more for sure.
Great. And then we'll have you on your merry way. But thank you so much, by the way. This has been so helpful to everybody. It's just been so great getting your perspective on all this.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun, and anytime, seriously.
Awesome. Well, here's another one that I think is a question that a lot of people are going to want to like your perspective on, which is lyrical themes. Like, what are some things that kind of seem to keep coming up that you need music for, just whether it's like emotions or like just specific lyrics that you're trying to convey by locking the music to the picture?
Yeah, I'd say really positive lyrics are often needed. You know, something that's very not simplistic, like not just, oh, I'm happy, you know, but things that just feel really good, because there are often moments in shows when it's helpful to have the support of a song like that, and not just moments when things are going so well for the characters. I mean, that could just be setting the atmosphere for like a sunny day, and it's just like a brief transition cue, or it might be playing under a scene when things are not going well, like playing in counterpoint to what is happening on screen. That's a really fun way of using music. Like, if it's a fight scene and you have like a really sweet, like vintage, happy song playing underneath, like that is a really cool technique to use. So, yeah.
Okay, final question for you. And this is another one that's like you maybe hinted at this a little earlier, was just like the importance of having the production build, you know, like the whole tension and release of it all. Like how would you say that kind of factors into like your selections of songs for scenes in TV and film?
Definitely, like if it's a long use, it makes a big difference. If it's like an end titles use, usually that'll be like the climax or most dramatic point of an episode right at the end. And yeah, I'd say that's something that like is surprisingly rare to find, something that really builds throughout. And we talked about that at Sync Keepers too. I think, like, yeah, right now I'm listening for a song that will play at the season finale of an episode where there's like a big kiss and the camera like looks up to the starry sky, and like, I don't know, that sounds cheesy, and it might be a cheesy moment, but hopefully the song won't be, and it'll be like a song that really builds because it's like a cosmic thing that's happening. So I think that does happen occasionally, but a lot of the uses that we have are much shorter, and the build is not as important. It's almost more important for it to be steady, because it's really only trying to accomplish one particular thing. So there's definitely room for both.
So it's only over like, say, like montages or like feature kind of sections of the show where you would want something that just really builds over time. Yeah, for that kind of stuff.
Probably. I mean, with some exceptions, but yeah, generally.
Great. Well, I mean, unfortunately, that's all the time we have today for answering questions here with Julian. But Julian, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate this. We're going to archive the call so that people can check it out later. And
Awesome.
look forward to having you back on sometime soon, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. This was a pleasure, and thank you everybody for joining in. I really appreciate all of the attendance and the questions. They're really good questions. So I'd love to come back.
99 people, by the way.
Awesome.
Big
Come
call.
on, one more person. One more.
All right. Well, everybody have a fantastic day, and we'll see you next time. All right.
Yeah. Thanks.